Yield to whim. In 2004, I made a New Year's resolution after seeing the Gettysburg Address on a PowerPoint that I would never, ever do a PowerPoint presentation ever again. And I have kept true to that promise, although I do find the power of pictures to share an experience to be powerful. So I still like to use a few pictures when I talk about a topic. As we speak, right now, we have a painter who is making paints and painting on glass with nanoparticles. As we speak right now, we have a composer named Ethan Janney who is busy recording bird sounds that he will deconstruct and then reconstruct and then compare to jazz melodies and look at elements in both. As we speak right now, we have a artist-scientist up at Djerassi Resident Artist Program who is dancing and choreographing algorithms and Fibonacci numbers. And we have another composer from Italy, Luca Forcucci, who is busy grabbing sounds from all kinds of places where you wouldn't even think sound exists. So the month of July has been devoted the last 2 years at Djerassi Resident Artist Program to a mix of science and art, to a mix of scientist and artist. Everyone that is up there now has 1 foot in art and 1 foot in science. Most of them did not know each other. They come from Spain, from Italy, from California, from New York, all over the country, and they are living together for 30 days. They have an amazing chef who cooks for them 5 nights a week, and they're on their own to make these massive community dinners, and the conversations at dinner would just knock your socks off. They talk about physics and math, and it's a very, very exciting time. We have a medical doctor there this year. We had one last year as well. Last year, Charlotte Jacobs was there. Her book, her biography of Jonas Salk, just came out to rave reviews. She spent her time last year at this time holed away working on the galleys. And this year we have a doctor from George Washington University named Caroline Wilbury, whose specialty is making sure that medical students in their curriculum are instructed in diagnostic techniques that are developed by observing art. And she's actually was just quoted in a Pacific Standard article last week. And I would be remiss not to acknowledge Curtis Frank, who's here in the audience, who was there last summer at this time, a chemical engineer who works on paint and also made a sculpture that still stands on the property. Thank you very much, Dr. Frank. So about how did all this come about? Over 60 years ago, a young chemist named Djerassi was working with several other young chemists in Mexico, and they happened upon a way to create progesterone from yams, laying the groundwork, which they did not know at the time. If any of you have read any of 4 of Djerassi's autobiographies, they didn't know it, but it laid the groundwork for the commercial application of the birth control pill. So fast forward about 25, 30 years, and the birth control pill made Djerassi a very wealthy man, and he had always loved this part of the country. He returned as president of Syntex with a position in the biochemistry department at Stanford, and he bought 1,200 acres up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour from right here. Very remote. We're at the end of a 1-lane, 3-mile road with no guardrails. And it's extraordinarily remote, even though it is close to San Francisco. And he had a cattle ranch there for about 10 years. And then his daughter, who was an artist, a poet, and a writer, killed herself in 1978 at the age of 28. And he and his wife, the noted literary critic Diane Millbrook, decided that the way to honor Pamela's spirit would be to create a place to nourish living artists. So at first, female artists only, who were identified through the Center for Research on Women at Stanford, stayed in the house that Pamela lived in. And they reported feeling isolated and alone, which was antithetical to what Diane and Carl wanted. So the bottom had fallen out of the beef market, and they repurposed the cattle barn and repurposed the ranch manager's house into a place for writers and a place for a choreographer. We have a fully sprung dance floor, a composer, and visual artist. So for 34 years, they provided residencies for artists up on the mountain. About 4 years ago, I was lucky enough to get the job of executive director. And in getting to know Carl, who was just a very, very interesting man, I was struck how he himself had indulged the artistic side of himself. Number one, largest collector of Paul Klee works in the world, owned 175 works by Paul Klee. Number two, had transitioned his own career when he retired from chemistry to become a playwright and poet. Did not get the kind of attention or accolades as he had as a chemist. Has anybody here actually seen any of Carl Djerassi's plays? Have you ever gone to them? He picks very interesting topics. I think because he invented the birth control pill, or considered himself the father of it, he felt he could speak with enormously intimate detail about sexual functions. And so many of his plays are on those themes. The Sexual Lives of the German Critical Theorists is one of them. He's got another play, it is about a chemistry professor killing another chemistry professor through a very inventive bubble technique because of tenure issues. I think he was playing something out that was going on at Stanford. In any event, he indulged that part of himself and wrote poetry. And I thought, well, why don't we see what we can do to bring art and science together here? Because there'd been some accidental things that had happened up there. They had Nina Wise had been up there with Ralph Abrams, and they had created a one-man show on Johannes Kepler. And that had just kind of happened organically. And I thought, well, what if we were more intentional about this? And then one of the most wonderful things that happened to me, someone introduced me to Piero Scaruffi. And Piero then, the hub, introduced me to so many different people across the universe that were doing art and science work. And we discovered that really no one was doing something where it was about process, not product. There's no work requirement, and never has been, up at Djerassi. We tell the artist, and now we tell the artist and scientist, your job is to be. That's it. You don't have to impress anybody, you don't have to make anything, you don't have to write anything. Now, artists and scientists, being so internally driven, are extraordinarily productive and are very busy, but really their whole job is to be. We're not a public space. They're on their own for 30 days. So we put together a little committee, and Piero helped me. We found a partner in Leonardo. Leonardo is our partner for the Artist Science Residency, which I dubbed Scientific Delirium Madness. People either love it or hate it. Roald Hoffman, the chemist, hated it, and I explained that we needed something to cut through the clutter. And we had the first year over 200 applicants and nominees, and whittled it down to the 12 that were able to join us last summer. Went through the same process again for this summer, and we now have the 12 plus a dancer who are with us. One of the slides that Piero had is we do have an open house. And if you want to meet any of these people or see any of these things, open house is next Sunday. And there's about 40 tickets left online. It sells out every year. And you can come up and wander our 583 acres and 5.5 miles of trails and watch the dancers dance algorithms and kind of experience firsthand what they have created and what their work is, as well as Piero will be moderating a fishbowl that talks about art and science issues that they've been surfacing as part of their dinner conversations over the past 10 days. So in a nutshell, that's what Scientific Delirium Madness is all about. We'd love to see more opportunities for scientists and artists to get together without the pressure, in a very, it's not casual, I guess it is casual, environment, but they get to know each other and understand the creative spirit. It's the same reason we do things like that for artists. Very often, visual artists will only, when they become visual artists, hang out with other visual artists. So for them to understand how a poem gets created by a poet, or how a dance is created, changes the way their creative process works. And in that moment, all kinds of exciting things happen, because they think differently about the things they thought they knew. We're about risk-taking, we're about unexpected attachments, and I hope that Kurt would agree, the relationships that form become relationships for a lifetime. Lifelong collaborations are born out of this time where we do nothing but invite, revere, and respect artists and now scientists to be. Thank you.